Okay, everybody, welcome to the show. It's Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. And I'm not going to lie to you, last week was kind of a boring waiver wire show. Took me maybe 20 minutes to do all of my waiver claims, which is really light. Just weren't a lot. Yeah, nobody was on a bye. It was whatever. This week is BANANAS. It is an amazing waiver wire week. It's almost overwhelming. Right, Jamie? Am I wrong here? We haven't talked about this before the show, but that is how I'm feeling.
Would you say you'd like to be beamed past week 14 into week 15 just to know what happened?
Yeah, I got the Star Trek shirt on today because I want to live long and prosper in the fantasy playoffs. And is it too early to say happy holidays or like Merry Christmas or whatever it is?
There's a coworker. I'm going to tell the story. You can figure out who it is. There's a coworker who is getting very angry at watching some programming over the weekend where there were still Thanksgiving themes. So Sunday, 4 days after, whatever it is, after Thanksgiving, and still, we give thanks for.
Yeah.
No, you can't say that. No way.
I know him. He like no more than a few days after New Year's are you allowed to say Happy New Year. But what I was going to say is Happy Holidays. You have gotten a gift, everybody. You have gotten Isaac Garendo, 11% rostered. 12% roster. Starting running back.
Now he's 12% roster.
Can't forget it. Holidays are ruined. I mean, what a gift. Unfortunately, obviously, these gifts come with bad news as both McCaffrey and Jordan Mason are either currently on IR or will be on IR. So with that said, we've got 6 teams on a bye: Baltimore, Denver, Houston, Indianapolis, New England, and Washington. Jamie, who are the top 3 waiver wire priorities?
Isaac Garendo, and Isaac Garendo. I really haven't thought much past him about who's the second and third best options. I guess we'll go receivers. So we'll go with Elijah Moore would be 2. And then I have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine slightly ahead of Adam Thielen just because of the matchups in week 14 for each receiver. And then the schedule moving forward for the Titans is so unbelievably fantastic that if he can continue to get targets and maybe add a few more catches on top of it, he could be an absolute stud. Clearly, if he continues to score touchdowns, but he's just been continuing to get better and better. And just given the schedule, I like him slightly better than Thielen. But those are the if you want to say 4 guys, those are the 4 guys you want to add.
You said Thielen was the 4th one?
Yeah, I mean, look, Thielen's coming off a big game. Again, don't fall for the Tampa Bay trap. This is something we've seen several times throughout the season that receivers go against the Bucs, they go nuts, and then they don't do anything the following week. This is probably going to happen to Thielen because he's playing the Eagles. Then he gets the Cardinals. I'm sorry. Then he gets Chiefs and the Cardinals, right? Or something like that.
Cowboys, Cardinals, Bucks.
Cowboys, Cardinals, Bucks. So Cowboys not awful. We know the Cardinals not easy. And the Bucks, clearly you get to that championship week and he's still doing something of significance, you're going to want to start him. But with the way Bryce Young is playing, it's worth buying into Thielen. So all those receivers are kind of, pick your favorite one because Moore could lose value if Tillman returns. They get the Steelers this week. And obviously, Westbrook-Ikhine is not the most trustworthy player.
All right, Dave, how about you? Who are your top 3 priorities?
Garendo's number 1, and I think Elijah Moore needs to be top 3, so I agree with that. Let's call him 2, but there's no Jameis. There's no Lamar Jackson. There's no Jaden Daniels. There's no Bo Nix. There's no Anthony Richardson. What's wrong with Jameis as the 3rd guy to pick up? And this is the time of year where you're going to need to be up on who you're playing. If you're in a fantasy matchup this week and you need to win and your opponent has, I don't know, CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson as their quarterbacks or Lamar Jackson as his quarterback, you can play keep away. I would not want to go up against Jameis. I know he's taking on the Steelers. I know the Steelers defense is great. I know that Joe Burrow is really the only guy that's gone off against them. I don't care. This dude throws the ball too much. He gets numbers in a number of different ways. I don't want to face Jameis Winston if I don't have to. I would try and get him to keep away from my opponent or to use as a bye week replacement if I've got one of those quarterbacks that's on bye. So my top 3, Garendo, Moore, Jameis.
Yeah, if Moore comes back, if Cedric Tillman comes back, though, is Moore going to be ranked ahead of Cedric Tillman for you guys?
Yes. There's no coincidence that Jameis has 3 great games. Moore has 3 great games. Every time Jameis has played well, Moore's out of hand in it. So we've seen the opposite in terms of Tillman. Tillman's had a bad game and Jameis had a bad game. It was the Chargers game. I I just think with the way where he lines up, what he does for Jameis, the thing that will happen is we'll go back to probably one of these guys being left out, because I don't think we're going to get like what we saw last night where Judy goes crazy. Njoku scores 2 touchdowns. Moore has over 100 yards, so somebody will get left out. And look, I agree with Dave. Jameis is the first quarterback to go get, but it's a pretty good week for quarterbacks in terms of the guys that are available and the schedule that they have. So Will Levis's schedule is unbelievable. Absolutely fantastic for 4 games. So if your quarterback situation is messy for whatever reason, he's got some long-term potential. Like if you want to go 2 weeks without Anthony Richardson, if you don't want to trust the matchup against Denver, because presumably their defense will get healthy. They were a mess last night. If the defense gets healthy and you want to go Levis over Anthony Richardson, I may have it ranked that way. I haven't thought that far ahead yet, but they're going to be close, especially if Levis torches the Jaguars, which he easily can. Caleb Williams is available. He's playing as well as Jameis, if not better, in the last 2 weeks. And his matchup's somewhat easier this week, given the circumstances. So it's not like there's not a handful of quarterbacks, and then you go a little bit deeper. Again, I would take Jameis over these guys as well. But Aiden O'Connell, great matchup, coming off a very strong game against the Chiefs. Cooper Rush has played very well in the last 3 weeks. Unbelievable matchup against the Bengals this week. So if you miss on Jameis, that's why I don't know. For me, he's not top 3, or quarterback's not top 3. There are guys you can get by with this week. So to Dave's point, which I think is certainly valid, if you want to play defense against your opponent, I'm not going to look at that and say, oh, I didn't get Jameis, now I'm stuck. You can easily find O'Connell or Cooper Rush on waivers, and just given the matchups, would not be surprising if those guys are better than Jameis this week, just based on who they're playing.
But let's be real. If you could play keep away with the quarterbacks that you named, Winston, Levis, O'Connell, Cooper Rush, Aaron Rodgers is out there in half the leagues. To me, Jameis is the one that I'd want to keep away the most, not Levis. I'm not thinking about week 15 or 16 in this scenario. It's just this week. I'm trying to keep my opponent from winning this week. And
yeah,
so
I mean, I don't think I'm going into my waiver claims with the idea of playing defense on my 3rd or 4th claim.
Well, but you look at, I think, you look at your opponent, and if your opponent needs a quarterback and you are good with your lineup this week, then you
better go get Garendo.
Well, Garendo's going to be first for everybody everywhere anyway. Like even the team that's out of it is going to put in a claim for Garendo just to play keep away from the rest of the league, just to have him on their team. And the team that's got the most fab left, that's who's going to get Garendo. Yeah. Someone's going to empty the purse for him in every single league. It's going to happen.
No dispute there. Garendo's the priority, but also not a bad idea to play keep away. And you know what? I went back and I listened to an old waiver wire show, and I think, oh gosh, I don't remember who it was, but we sort of, I wish we had been a little higher on this quarterback, because quarterback is kind of deep, but it may have been Bo Nix right before he broke out. And my point is, look at Jameis Winston, and he has scored more than 29 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. You look at Caleb Williams, he scored 30.
3 of 5.
It's 3 of 5. And
sorry, there was the Pittsburgh game. I wasn't really counting.
The Pittsburgh game, just kind of sort of throw out just because of the weather. And he only threw 27 times, which is not like him.
Right. So I'm saying, even if you don't need a quarterback, I don't know if you want to leave Jameis and Caleb Williams on waivers. These guys are.
But that's the point, though. Again, there's 2 guys there that you just named. Like,
yeah, 2, but like Will Levis isn't scoring 30 points, and
but Will Levis has done this in some tough situations, and now he's about to get layups.
I'm just saying, that's true. That's true. But Jameis and Caleb,
agreed, they're better.
Yeah,
but I'm just playing the other side of this. So if Dave is going to block me from getting a quarterback because I have only Anthony Richardson as my starter, and I can't get Jameis, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Yeah.
Of course you are, because there's another quarterback that you can go.
Right. And I think it's
going to be somebody who's not as good as Winston. And then here's the other side to it. Playing keep away, man, we're not talking about very many people that's going to do that, but we are talking to more people who are going to need to get a quarterback off the waiver wire. And in that case, I'd want Jameis ahead of, this is for me to start on my team in week 14 to make the playoffs.
No, I agree. Jameis is the guy to start.
Jameis is who I'm targeting there. Now, if I've got Jalen Hurts as my quarterback and I'm going up against Josh Allen, like, I've got no reason to pick up Jameis Winston to keep him away from somebody else. Forget that. And in that case, then I would go and get maybe I'm getting suckered into Thielen because of the Tampa Bay thing, but I just think he's going to get more targets more consistently, and Bryce Young's playing well.
Don't forget about Jaleel McLaughlin. I know he's on a bye, but maybe gaining a little bit of momentum here. Obviously, you can't get by too much into one performance.
It's so maddening because he looked great. He really looked great. And, we go back to the Estime game against Kansas City. He didn't look as good as McLaughlin did last night. I just wish he did more in the passing game because I feel like that's in his game. And they just don't do it. Like 2 targets, 1 catch.
Right.
Like, no yards. It's just frustrating.
Sean Payton said that he felt like some of the wide zone stuff were going to be good in this matchup against Cleveland, and that's why they used more of McLaughlin.
All right, let's go to this website together, everybody. Go to shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. It's a very cool website. There's a lot of fantasy gear there, and then there's just some non-fantasy gear that's really cool. I think I saw a somewhat portable Pac-Man machine that I kind of want to buy. So anyway, just browse, right? It says the holiday season's here, and now it's the perfect time to crown your fantasy football champion. You got to be thinking about that. Whether you're celebrating a championship or teasing the league's biggest loser, Fantasy Football Today's new fan shop, powered by ShopSense, has everything you need. From trophies to t-shirts, we've got the gear to make your league unforgettable. But that's not all. If you need a gift for the ultimate fan, or if you're looking to upgrade your fan cave, we've got you covered with everything from sports memorabilia to game day decor, perfect for the holiday season. Visit the shop now at shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. There's going to be a link in the episode description, or you can scan the QR code and go, once again, shop.cbssports.com/fantasy. It's really good stuff. One more point I wanted to bring up here before we'll take a break. We'll give you the news and notes and top 3 at each position. I think what complicates this week, because Jameis and Judy were barely started last night. I mean, Judy was started in like 23% of leagues or something like that. Jameis was he was started in 4% of leagues. So
he's not rostered in that many leagues.
26%. Jerry Judy was 84% rostered, 32% started. So anyway, what I was going to say, what complicates it is like, what if Keenan Allen's available? What if Caleb Williams is available? Are there other players that fit that description? I'm not sure, but Keenan Allen is particularly, and he's pretty rostered, but what is he? 76% rostered. That's he could be out there, and he's coming off 2 huge games in a row against Minnesota and Detroit. Now it's San Francisco, but then it's Minnesota, and then it's Detroit in his next 3 games. I mean, if Keenan Allen were available, obviously Garendo's one. Not even going to dispute that.
Allen is 2.
Allen's 2?
Yeah.
What about Caleb?
Caleb, by comparison to Jameis, I think you're talking about the top 2 quarterbacks.
Who's number 1 for you?
I would take Jameis first, just with the potential of a higher ceiling. It's not like they both have difficult matchups this week, especially if San Francisco's defense gets somewhat healthy.
Yeah.
The thing that I think you buy into is you can sort of count on the volume coming for Jameis. As Dave mentioned, the snow game was under 30 pass attempts. He's been 41 plus pass attempts in every other game. And so if the Steelers offense shows up again, that also factors into the snow game. This is gonna be a slow, grinded out defensive type of game based on how most Pittsburgh games have gone. So he may not be 50 plus pass attempts, and Caleb may be better. So I just think with that position, with the top 3 guys who are available, because I think there's a cutoff after Levis. Again, you could say O'Connell, great matchup, and he's coming off a strong game, and the same with Cooper Rush. But those are still 2 guys that you have no faith in, or at least probably shouldn't. And Levis is clearly borderline, but it's now 20 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4. And you know what Jacksonville has been to opposing quarterbacks, basically for everybody not named CJ Stroud. So I think just for the setup here for what Levis has, I put him at the tail end of the conversation. So I know for me, I have a lot of Richardson, that I bought back into, after he came back from his benching. I have, a few Jayden Daniels leagues, so I'm looking for a quarterback. And so Winston was I did the FFT Open, even though, I have the bye this week. I still want to accrue points, as you pointed out in the email. So the first quarterback I looked at was Winston. The second one was Caleb. The third one was Levis. And this is a league where I have Richardson, and I had picked up Trevor Lawrence. So for me, like I'm looking at, do I want to carry 2 guys for next week? And the answer is yes, because Richardson against the Broncos. So I don't mind Will Levis if that's the guy that I end up with, because his next 2 games are pretty fantastic.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a break and break it down a little bit more, give you some big injury news when we come back on Fantasy Football Today. Okay, we got suspension news to tell you about. We'll get to that in a moment. Aaron Rodgers is going to remain the starter for the Jets. Trevor Lawrence, concussion. Don't know if he'll play again this season. The Giants apparently have not named a starting quarterback yet for their upcoming game against New Orleans. Jordan Mason and Christian McCaffrey going on IR. J.K. Dobbins IR. Austin Eckler IR. Roshan Johnson concussion. And Bucky Irving does have this hip issue. We'll talk about him in a little bit. We expect him to play, but he's working through it. At wide receiver, we've got Romeo Doubs still questionable with this Thursday game at Detroit in the concussion protocol. Rashad Bateman's knee injury doesn't seem serious. Didn't see an update. What's the deal with Ladd McConkey? No concrete update, right?
Nothing concrete, something that they're keeping an eye on. He did do almost every interview post-game. I saw the one with... forget what it was. It was a local Georgia outlet, because he's from the state.
Yeah.
I forget the city he's from. He went to Georgia, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And he was all smiles. He was talking about how his recent performances have been great. He did the NFL Network interview after the game. He was all smiles. So it's clearly something we got to keep an eye on. But I would anticipate him playing at this point.
Okay.
And Bucky met with the media yesterday in Tampa, and so that's obviously a good sign as well.
Dallas Goedert left with a knee injury, and that one initially we got a report that it wasn't serious, but Dallas Goedert is apparently week to week and could end up on IR. Grant Calcaterra, I think he scored 8 or more fantasy points in 3 of 4 games when he got some work earlier in full PPR. Taysom Hill's out for the season. Jatavian Sanders for the Panthers, he could be back this week. Giants tight end Theo Johnson is likely out for the season. He was coming on a little bit. On the offensive line, Jets are beat up. Cowboys are kind of beat up. We'll see Tyler Guyton, see if he can play against Cincinnati with the high ankle sprain. And the Saints lost the starting guard, Nick Salvaderi, but they're getting back Eric McCoy, their center, this week. On defense, Giants defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence is out for the season, so a bad defense gets worse. Detroit's pretty beat up front, and they have a Thursday game against Green Bay. Sauce Gardner is probably going to be questionable for this game at Miami. We'll see. Jamie alluded to it earlier. The 49ers might be getting healthier on defense. Diamador Lenore practicing this week, or he will practice. Safety Talanoa Hufanga is going to practice this week. Maybe Bosa comes back. But we'll see we'll see what this matchup looks like for Caleb Williams.
You didn't mention the situation with Trent Williams. Their offensive lineman lost a child, so
yeah,
obviously very sad situation there. He's also dealing with an ankle injury, so we'll see if he's able to play. That would be big for clearly Isaac Guerrero as well.
2 defensive backs for the Jaguars left last week's game with an injury. They're already a great matchup. I think they're both okay based on what Doug Peterson said. Darnell Savage and Tyson Campbell. Houston linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair suspended for 3 games for his hit on Trevor Lawrence. They allow 3.8 yards per carry to running backs with Al-Shaair on the field and 4.5 yards per carry to running backs with him off the field. They have a bye, and then he's suspended for the fantasy playoffs. Miami, Kansas City, and Baltimore are the next 3 opponents for Houston. Let's see. Anything else that's major here? I'm going to say.
Did Denzel Ward come back last night?
I don't think he did, actually.
Yeah, he ran into the locker room. He was, dealing with his calf. And Delpit left to get checked for a concussion.
Yeah. That's so. And Russell Wilson's another guy that could be available. He's about 67% rostered, so he's coming off a huge game.
Yep.
And honestly, I've gotten a little bit of blowback from my Lamar Jackson still the MVP take. I'm gonna amend it. It is pretty clear that Riley Moss is the MVP of the NFL. That would be
Levi Wallace is the MVP.
Oh yeah, baby. Denver's number 2 cornerback.
That was one of the stupidest game plans I've ever seen in my life. Like, Judy is lighting you up.
Yeah. You
have one of the best shutdown corners in football.
Yes.
And Troy Aikman was begging for it. Like, it was crazy.
100%. Nobody understands it. All right, one thing I do understand is that you can still sign up for the BetMGM app and use our bonus code FANTASY. And if you do that, you're going to get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app and use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. Top three at each position. Jamie, give me the top three quarterbacks.
The top three quarterbacks, I think we've covered it quite a bit. It is Jameis Winston, number 1, Caleb Williams, number 2, Will Levis, number 3.
And if Russell Wilson were available against the Browns this week, where would you put him?
4.
Okay, behind Will Levis. All right, so Jameis, Caleb Williams, Will Levis, Russell Wilson. If those guys aren't available, in my leagues, you could look at Cooper Rush. He's got a good matchup this weekend.
And Aiden O'Connell.
And Aiden O'Connell, yeah. Dave, top three running backs.
Garendo's number 1, 89% available. I don't even know how much more we have to go into on him. How about this? A 49ers running back has had at least 15 touches in all but 3 games this year. 2 of the 3 games where a running back didn't have 15 were because of injury. So this is the workload floor for Isaac Garendo. Could absolutely go off against Chicago. Their run defense isn't very good. Niners need to get the ball moving. He's a good running back. So he's someone that I'm going to rank as a number 2 fantasy running back. And he could be someone who helps you win your league the rest of the way, because I don't think we're going to see Mason or McCaffrey at all. Behind him, it's gross. There's 3 running backs that don't play in week 14, McLaughlin, McNichols, and Roshan. I don't think Roshan's going to play anyway because of the concussion. Those guys are interesting, but I might wait till Saturday to pick them up. Jerome Ford's the other guy. So if I had to rank 3 as far as like priority, urgency, etc., Garendo 1, Jerome Ford 2, and then I don't have a better name than McLaughlin.
Kamani Vidal?
Nah.
Rostered?
Nah.
All right.
Please let them use him more.
Yeah, right. Like,
I mean, that's the hope. And they got a matchup with Tampa Bay coming up, but they couldn't do anything running the ball. And so I would like to see, he averaged at least 5 yards to carry against the Falcons. So let's see if they give him some more work. I think that's the answer to what is going to help them, in place of Gus Edwards, in place of J.K. Dobbins, because Gus Edwards isn't it.
What they need to fix is their offensive line. It was an abomination against Atlanta. Atlanta came into the game with 10 sacks on the season, and they got to Justin Herbert like 5 times. It was crazy. Yeah. And that offensive line didn't do anything to help either running back. They each had like a couple of decent runs, but I don't have a lot of confidence right now in that Chargers run game.
Let me just give the good and the bad for Isaac Garendo. And when I say the bad, without question, I'd spend all my fab on him, right? So, or as much as I needed to.
Your devil's advocate case.
Yeah, well, just to put it in perspective, somebody's just said, would you start Garendo over Aaron Jones or Ken Walker? And it's a good question. If we just base Garendo on what Jordan Mason did, Jordan Mason was not a top 24 running back on a per game basis in weeks 1 through 8. He left one of those games early with an injury and he was having a big game. So that does factor in, but he also had 10 catches in 8 games and he only scored 3 touchdowns. He had some bad touchdown luck, I would say that, but I do think Garendo is probably going to be pretty low in catches. With that said, Mason played almost the entire time with Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk's not there, but Jennings obviously emerged. But I do think it's a good chance you're looking at a high volume running back who's not going to do a ton in the passing game.
Oh, you're hoping for the Dallas game.
What was the Dallas game?
14 carries for 85 yards, 3 catches.
And 3 catches would be great. That's
what you're hoping for. If you get that on a week-to-week basis, I would say probably a couple more carries. But that's what you're looking for. 17 to 20 total touches, which I think is very realistic in this offense. Dave gave you the numbers. There's a lot to like about the workload there. I do wonder, first off, Patrick Taylor in deeper leagues, you want to go make sure you pick him up too, just because he's the second guy now. And as we've seen, they cycle through running back sometimes when they go through these injuries. It's just the nature of what this team has been in the Kyle Shanahan era. And he also said, Kyle Shanahan in his news conference yesterday, they're going to add somebody else. So who that name is could also be very interesting, because it wouldn't be surprising if there's someone that has some ties to the 49ers. I think Jeff Wilson's on the Dolphins roster. But wouldn't be surprised if there's somebody with ties to San Francisco or this system that could come in and maybe get a couple of touches early on because Patrick Taylor is more of a special teams guy. If it gets some touches early on, and then that guy is going to steal some work from Garendo. So to Adam's point, you're still spending all of your fab on him. He is worth every cent going into it. We don't know what's going to happen once it plays out. But going into it, remember, if Trent Williams decides they're 5-7, he's shutting it down. That's not the same offensive line. We've seen that with McCaffrey the last 2 weeks. If they decide that they're going to start to shut down some of the receivers because they're out of it. Again, I don't think so. The division's well within reach, but you never know how these teams go coming off this big Super Bowl push the last couple of years, and guys are just beat up and tired. It's hard to say. Deebo Samuel, for example, could be one guy. But there are some scenarios where there's pitfalls here. But again, spend all your fab. He should get 17 to 20 total touches. He should be Jordan Mason. And if you're getting Jordan Mason, you're thrilled about it.
I've got a whole list. I was going to save this for the Adam turns into Cartman. These guys aren't available in my league section, but I've got a whole list of running backs that could fit into what the Niners will do. I'll save that for later in the show.
Okay.
More obvious probably McKinnon, right?
Yeah.
No, McKinnon didn't even make the list.
I didn't give the good news. The good news is the Bears are his next matchup. They give up 5 yards per carry to running backs and 18 or more carries to a running back in 5 straight games. The next matchup is the Rams, 4.6 yards per carry to running backs and 16 or more carries to a running back in 11 of 12 games. It sets up very nicely for Isaac Garendo. All right, let's go to the wide receivers. Jamie, top 3 wide receivers.
For me, it's Elijah Moore, number 1, Westbrook-Ikhine, number 2, and Adam Thielen, number 3. And if you want to put Thielen ahead of Westbrook-Ikhine, I get it. I just don't want to fall for the Tampa Bay game where every receiver seems to do well against that defense, and then they struggle the following week. He's a little different. It's not Ricky Pearsall, for example, where somebody has, not done anything in their career. But there's still a crowded receiving core here where there's going to be opportunities for other receivers like Xavier Legette. And let's not forget, David Moore has got a lot of targets the last 2 weeks, 19 targets in his last 2 games. So They are spreading the ball around. Bryce Young's playing great. But here comes Philly, and so probably going to shut down this entire offense. And then what are we left with feeling about, Adam Thielen and his production? In terms of Westbrook-Ikhine, he's gotten 19 targets in his last 3 games with Will Levis since Will Levis came back from his shoulder injury. He's now scored 8 touchdowns in his last 8 games, a touchdown in 7 of 8 games. And the nice thing about it is it's not just the touchdowns lately. He's been 61 yards or more in 2 of his last 3 games. So you're getting some production aside from just the end zone work. So is it sustainable? Probably not. But I don't know if any of these guys are really sustainable because if Elijah Moore gets Cedric Tillman back, they get Steelers this week, you can easily see that going, in a different direction as well. So none of these guys, if this was a normal week where everybody's active, no buys, you're talking about number 3 receivers at best. Elijah Moore could be a number 2 receiver this week, depending on what your team looks like. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine could be a number 2 receiver this week. I'm going to tell you right now, Adam Thielen's going to be one of my sits for start sit. So I would try to avoid him, but could easily be a number 3 receiver as well.
Dave, we've got Mark Andrews, Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz on a bye. So who are our top priorities at tight end? Taysom Hill out for the season. Who are our top priorities at tight end?
I don't have a great list. Disley's still at the top of it. Freiermuth is at the top. And then Jake Ferguson makes sense. If he comes back, I would stash him. We know that he's been out for a couple games with a concussion. Hopefully he can come back. And then it's like Juwan Johnson, Cole Kmet, Dawson Knox. I don't think it's a great list this week at tight end.
Just play the Cowboys tight end.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the Bengals are so bad
good
against tight ends.
Yeah. So if
Schoonmaker and Ferguson,
if you want to, sort of game it a little bit, hopefully Ferguson would get good news before you run waivers tonight. If you have the ability to pick up both and drop one if they're both out there, because they are. But Ferguson can be an absolute monster against the Bengals. I mean, they just absolutely stink against that, especially if Logan Wilson's out again.
Yeah, but it's not just that. Like, he's got the 2 best matchups on paper coming up. He's got Cincinnati, they're 31st against tight ends. At Carolina, they're 32nd. And Tampa Bay, they're 27th. So I don't expect him to be a league winner necessarily. It's Jake Ferguson, it's Cooper Rush. But
Ferguson can still be a league winner. He was pretty good last year.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's Cooper Rush. I mean, if CeeDee Lamb is out, then yeah, I mean, I don't know.
You also named 3 teams that Dallas might be able to run the ball against.
Yeah,
and that could take the ball out of Cooper Rush's hands. I don't want to argue against this because I like where we're going.
Oh, there's a shootout coming with the Bengals. Every team has a shootout with the Bengals.
Probably. But it doesn't necessarily lock up like a huge game for one of these tight ends. But I would start one of these tight ends. 6 teams on that? Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the DSTs, Jamie.
A little risky with some of these options, but you got the Saints taking on the Giants. We know that's been good for the last couple of weeks without Daniel Jones there. Dolphins against the Jets. Aaron Rodgers stinks. Cardinals against the Seahawks. We already saw that once. Now they're back at home. Seahawks against the Cardinals. We already saw that once. They're on the road. And the Titans against the Jaguars because it's Mac Jones.
Arizona's got a nice playoff schedule, by the way. They've got you could probably keep them for the rest of the way, and they've been good. And they have Dave, I got to give Dave a lot of credit. He talked about their pass rush on Sunday morning show. I was a little skeptical because their pressure rate hasn't been good, but they have 18 sacks in their last 4 games, the Cardinals.
Oh, we talked about that Sunday night too. Just what I don't understand what Kevin O'Connell was not seeing, or certainly Sam Darnold, but they threw everything at him and he could not pick up the blitz to save his life.
Interesting. Okay, kickers.
You'll see that again in the playoffs against Minnesota.
John Parker Romo is someone to add. He's your number 1 kicker. He's been really good and has a good matchup. We don't usually talk about matchup with kickers, but who are the kickers to get?
John Parker Romo, Evan McPherson, good matchup against the Cowboys. Tyler Bass, good matchup against the Rams. Matthew Wright, not the same matchup. You know I'd like to play the Raiders every week in terms of kickers. Look what Will Lutz and Matthew Wright have done the last 2 weeks. And then Jason Myers taking on the Cardinals.
Chase McLaughlin's too highly rostered.
He's too highly rostered.
Okay, that's just taking on the Raiders.
All right, now it's time for the Workhorse to Watch segment, brought to you by Microsoft Copilot Plus PCs, powered by Snapdragon, the fastest, most intelligent Windows PCs ever. In this segment, we'll identify a player whose battery just doesn't seem to run out, similar to Copilot Plus PCs. And, he got the hip injury, but the battery did not run out for Bucky Irving, Jamie, and now he gets the Raiders this week. Top 5 running back?
He's pretty close, just based on hopefully being healthy. But you said it, his battery could have certainly run out with what was going on with him in that game. I think he also had a foot injury. I think they reported afterwards as well that he's fighting through. But 25 carries, 3 catches. It's now been at least 3 catches in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row. So he's doing a great job catching the ball. And this was his season high, career high in carries. So he saved them. Baker Mayfield was struggling. He was banged up. They needed to get some production just to sort of settle things down, and he took over that game against the Panthers. So it's now 17.7 PPR points in 3 games in a row. It's 15.4 PPR points in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of his last 7 games. So he's becoming a stud. And somebody asked me this: where is he going to be ranked next year? I mean, he's a round 2 pick right now. So you're just looking at what he's doing, how he's getting it done. How they're phasing out Rachaad White, understandably so, because this kid runs harder and gets the yards that Rachaad White doesn't seem to get. And if he's going to get equal, if not better, opportunities in the passing game, he is their guy moving forward. So it's been fun to watch his rookie year and this campaign unfold. And I don't think it's going to slow down unless he gets hurt. So hopefully he's healthy.
That was the Workhorse to Watch segment, brought to you by Microsoft Copilot Plus PCs. Whether you're multitasking like never before, working far from power outlets, or sketching your own ideas into existence, you can do it with the new Microsoft Copilot Plus PC powered by Snapdragon. Battery life varies by device and with usage and settings.
So I have a question for you, because I asked you this on Sunday, and I did a X poll, Twitter poll on this. Could you win a fantasy championship with the all-rookie roster? And now we have another player to add to the list because of Isaac Guerrero. So here's the team. I'll give it to you again. Okay. It's Jaden Daniels at quarterback. I didn't do Superflex. So Jaden Daniels at quarterback, Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy at running back, Neighbors, Harrison, Thomas at receiver, Bowers at tight end, and McConkey at flex. And now you have Guerrero coming off the bench. So this was 4,200 votes. I didn't say 42,000. I 4,200 votes. 39% said that they would take this roster. I did buy or sell. So 39% said they buy the roster. 52% said they would sell it, and 8.3 said see results.
I just don't like the receivers that much, which is the shocking thing, right? It's like I like McConkey. I think is my favorite. What was Neighbors, Harrison?
It was Neighbors, Harrison, Brian Thomas, and Ladd McConkey. And so that was probably the most comments that I got was the receivers are just not consistent. Mac Jones with Brian Thomas doesn't make me comfortable. Neighbors has struggled since Daniel Jones has gone out. So that was kind of the pushback. But again, you look at how these guys have performed. The roster would stack up. Bowers can make a case as best tight end in fantasy. Bucky Irving right now is, as you alluded to, top 5 running back.
Garendo changes things. But first, 2 questions. Garendo changes things, right? But 2 questions for you guys. Would you rather have Garendo or Tracy rest of season?
Garendo.
Same.
Now, Dave, make an old man fantasy lineup to compete against this rookie lineup.
Oh, kill it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you got like Kamara, Derrick Henry. You could go with that. Barkley, I don't think is an old man.
He's not old.
Oh, you're saying old.
Yeah, like among the oldest at their position. You'd have to go with Keenan Allen.
Kelsey,
yeah. Devontae Adams. Cooper Kupp. Is he in there?
Who would the quarterback be?
Somebody over 30 or over 35?
Like old, yeah. Over 35, like Stafford. Or
Well, how old's Jameis?
That's a good question.
Jameis or Stafford?
There's not going to be an old quarterback better than Daniels.
No. Jameis is 30, so we made him too old. I guess it's Stafford. Russell Wilson?
Stafford.
Okay. And then I like this. I like the old team. Kamara and Henry.
Cooper Kupp would be on the old team. Mike Evans would be on the old team.
Oh, Evans? Yeah, I like the old team. Let's go with the old team. All right, we had a question in the chat that I just want to get to. Who's the DST to add if you don't need anyone for week 14, but you just need someone for week 15? If Cardinals, they have the Patriots. If someone drops the Ravens, they're at the Giants, and they're only 74% roster. The Ravens at the Giants in week 15. Who's got the Jets? Jacksonville versus the Jets. You could maybe look at that matchup. Probably not, though. So the Ravens and the Cardinals. What'd you say, Dave?
You wouldn't feel good about it.
No. Okay, let's take a break and come back with the deep leagues and the shallow leagues after this. Welcome back. All right, Jamie, shallow league guys, and how would they compare not to Garendo but to everyone else?
How would they compare to Garendo?
Or not to him, because Garendo's number 1.
So the quarterbacks you mentioned, Russell Wilson. Just want to get the list. Sorry, you mentioned Russ.
What's
you
the
got
sponsorship for Caleb Williams.
It's like 60s.
Caleb's in the range we talk about, right? No, he's just above it. I'm sorry,
67.
he's at 69%.
Yeah.
So Caleb's not readily available.
About a third of the leagues, you'd say Caleb is available.
Yeah.
Okay. 10 team.
Richardson, if you're looking ahead, because after the Denver matchup, the schedule is very favorable. Russell Wilson, because I don't think the Browns are going to slow him down. And look, we could sit here and say, oh, Jameis only did this in the snow game. Russell had 15 points in the snow game, and then followed that up with a huge game, obviously, against the Bengals. Now, it's not the same matchup because the Bengals aren't the Browns aren't as bad as the Bengals, but they're not far off. So
I'm raising my hand. I wanted to get in there. How do you feel about Anthony Richardson in this league winner conversation? If he's available versus Jameis versus Caleb versus Keenan Allen, how do you feel about Anthony Richardson other than Isaac Garendo being the top claim?
Comparatively to the other quarterbacks?
Comparative to everyone other than Isaac Garendo, I guess.
I think he definitely belongs. I mean, once you get past the Denver game, which again, if the Broncos are all beat up, he may have the opportunity to play well. He's not going to throw the same level that Jameis does, but he had so many drops. My gosh, it was disastrous for him, and that's something that I think has been a little undersold is how bad his receivers have been in dropping passes, considering how bad his completion rate is. But after that, he gets the Titans and the Giants in the fantasy playoffs, and that's a pretty good schedule. Knowing that they could be fighting for their playoff lives. So yeah, he's up there in the league winning conversation for sure. He's been over 30 fantasy points, over 25 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games.
It comes down to how urgently you need a quarterback. If you don't need a quarterback, then he should be a priority. But if you do need a quarterback, he's not going to be a priority and you're not going to get him.
Okay. Anthony Richardson. If you don't need a quarterback, would you pick up Richardson, Caleb Williams, or Jameis?
Don't need one?
Yeah.
Richardson.
If I don't need a quarterback, I don't know if I'm picking up any of these guys.
I am, because
I think you meant for this week.
You could play it either way. You don't need one for this week, but you want one going forward. Or I would not leave a guy with huge league winning upside on waiver wire, even if I had a good quarterback personally. So
that's fine, but I don't think that should be like it. This is what Jamie was talking about earlier in the show. Like, how big of a priority does it need to be? when I talked about playing defense, which is what you're talking about, Adam, it was more specifically for week 14. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win in week 14. If I need to win in week 14, that's going to be most people out there.
Right.
But if I don't need to win in week 14, or if I'm really good at quarterback and I love my bench and all that stuff, I don't know how much I'm prioritizing this, even though I know that Richardson, Caleb, Jameis, like they're good. They've got a chance to really help somebody else in my league. I don't know how badly or how desperately I'm going to make a play for any of them.
I guess the question would be, and this factors in Dave's point and Adam's point, short term, long term. How many set and forget it quarterbacks do you think there are?
Not that many.
Not
6?
12.
6, maybe?
The reason why I don't think there are that many is because there are so many good ones that you could. Okay, let's name them.
Well, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. To me, that's easy.
You still consider Hurts to be that, by the way?
Yes,
3 straight.
I'm not benching Jalen Hurts for any of these guys.
No way.
Yeah, he barely throws. But okay. All right, you know what? I don't want to get too sidetracked here.
Okay, there's 5. Can you name others that you're
No, but would some, like, I'm looking at the chat right now. Would you drop Kyler Murray to pick up Anthony Richardson?
If I'm not playing Kyler?
Yeah.
His schedule.
Yeah, Kyler's your second quarterback. Kyler's got Seattle, New England, Carolina, and the Rams. I like
those. Those last 3 games are great.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to do that.
Okay. All right. Keep going, Jamie. Who are the other shallow league guys? Go to running back, I guess.
Sure. Running back would be. I still think Jalen Warren. He's right at the cusp. I usually go about 85% for the 10-team league. So, Jalen Warren would be one. I still think you should roster Gus Edwards just to see what happens. Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah just to see what happens there with the Raiders, not knowing who's going to start this week. Jonathan Brooks had 3 catches. His workload increased. What I did a lot with the running backs for this week is basically learn your lesson from the San Francisco situation and get your handcuffs while they're still available, whether you need them or you want to pick up somebody else's handcuffs. So if you like what Blake Corum just did, where he had his most playing time and tied his lead tied his season high in terms of carries with 8, who knows what happens if Kyron Williams gets hurt? Could be a league winner, so any one of these guys. So you're going to hear me say a lot of names. Jonathan Brooks, if something happens to Chuba Hubbard, could still be a league winner. Tyler Algier can still be a league winner if Bijan Robinson goes down. Braylon Allen could still be a league winner if Breece Hall goes down. So all these guys are in this range. Jeremy McNichols as well. He's at 66%.
Ray Davis, Zach Charbonnet.
They're all in the usual spots of where we talk about adding guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, just get your handcuffs now. All right, wide receiver, shallow league wide receivers. Keenan Allen leads the way. Who else?
Keenan Allen is easily number 1. He's at, what'd you say, 71%?
76.
76%. I'm sorry, 71% was, I believe, last week. 76% for him. Michael Pittman, look, he's got the targets the last 3 weeks, and the schedule coming up is favorable. We don't know when Josh Downs is going to return. Cedric Tillman hopefully comes off of the concussion protocol and plays. Romo Dunze, I know he's been unlucky, but the targets have been there for him. So 26 targets in his last 3 games. Romeo Doubs could return from the concussion protocol. What a great matchup they have with all the injuries to the Lions right now. So Christian Watson also would not be surprised if he has a big game this week, just knowing the situation that they could be in a shootout. Dave talked about this last week. I agree. Chris Olave, if he's able to return in week 15 when he's eligible, if he's still going to play, coming off multiple concussions this year. And Keon Coleman may return this week from his wrist injury. The 2 games prior to him suffering the injury, which was week 9 against the Dolphins, he had at least 15 PPR points in both of those games.
Okay, Dave. Sorry, tight ends.
Tight ends, there's only 2. I would go with Hunter Henry on a bye because he's been awesome with Drake May more times than not and just had a 9-catch game, even though Austin Hooper continues to steal some touchdowns. And then Tucker Kraft, another one, just with the injuries that the Lions are dealing with, on top of the fact that we don't know if Dobbs will play. He's coming off one of his better games of the season, tied, I believe, for most catches and had his most yards. And then hopefully Dalton Kincaid can play. He's been, not practicing, so just keep that in mind. But at some point, he may still pay dividends, and we just lost Taysom Hill and have 6 teams on a bye. So if he does play this week, he's going to be in the starting conversation.
Okay, Dave.
I would hope for one of Hunter Henry, Tucker Kraft, Dalton Kincaid to be available, even in 12-team leagues. Maybe this is going to be in only like 18 leagues, but Jonnu Smith still isn't at 100%. Do a double check to make sure that Jonnu's not rostered.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned this on the show yesterday because we were talking about the Dolphins. Jonnu Smith has scored 21 or more points in 3 straight games. And I was like, has Travis Kelce ever done that? And yes, he has. But each of the last 2 times, I only went back a couple years. He did it in 2023. He did it in 2022. Each of the last 2 times Travis Kelce did that, scored. Well, actually, he did not score that many. He scored like 20 or more fantasy points in 3 straight games, Kelce. He slumped like right after. And it's just this unsustainable production. But obviously, Jonnu Smith is a must-start stud. Like, it's been great. But don't expect 21 or more points. I wouldn't anyway. But you never know. All right, Dave, none of these guys are available. Jonnu Smith, are you kidding me? Somebody picked him up in week 2. None of these guys are available in my league, Dave.
We'll start with quarterbacks, and we'll skip past Jameis and Levis. They're available in about 3/4 of CBS Sports leagues. And this list isn't pretty. It's Cooper Rush, who's given you at least 18 fantasy points in 2 of his past 3. Great matchup against Cincinnati. Aiden O'Connell, 94% available. He had over 23 fantasy points last week at Kansas City. Bryce Young finally had a good game. Mac Jones is out there if you're really, really desperate. I'm not going to recommend a Giants quarterback. How about this guy for Superflex leaguers? Michael Penix, 93% available. That's going to be every single redraft league. There's going to come a point where if Kirk Cousins continues to look like he did last week, you're going to see Michael Penix on the field for the Falcons. And he could end up being very, very good for that team. I really liked him. I'm going to skip running backs. I'll come back to them. Wide receivers that are available deep leagues. Parker Washington. We didn't even bring up his name yet. He had a monster game for Jacksonville. He's someone that I think I would go and look at as minimum like a bench receiver in PPR who might become a number 3. Maybe this week he is a number 3 in PPR just because of all the guys on bye. So that's a name that you can go and look at. Other names that are out there, and again, 80% or more leagues they're there. Brandon Cooks, Trey Tucker, Sterling Shepard is kind of like the cheap version of Parker Washington. And then there's a bunch of wide receivers. Devon Vele would probably be close to the headliner. These are guys that are on bye in week 14. Save this note. Maybe pick up one of these guys on Saturday. Devon Vele, Demario Douglas, Rashad Bateman, Alec Pierce, Noah Brown. We talked about tight ends. It's gross. Luke Schoonmaker is about as good as it gets. He's available in about 88% of leagues. Running back. Garendo, obviously, 89% available, or 88, whatever the hell he is. He's out there in a ton of leagues. Here are the running backs that I think the 49ers might sniff around. And Patrick Taylor, obviously, is on the team already, but he's more of a third down guy. Jamie mentioned it. He's more of a special teamer. I would not be surprised if in a game or 2, one of these other running backs could end up being ahead of Taylor on the depth chart. These are all running backs that I looked at. They're good zone runners, so they fit the scheme. And or they've played in an offense with a similar scheme. J.J. Taylor, Savon Ahmed, speaking of a former Dolphins running back, Jamie mentioned Jeff Wilson, but Ahmed is out there. These are all guys that are either free agents or they're on a practice squad. Tyrion Davis-Price, who the 49ers cut already. Myles Gaskin, Blake Watson, Jawar Jordan is in Houston. Izzy Abanikanda might be my favorite from the list. The Jets just cut him. And I liked him as a talent coming out. Absolutely good zone runner. Can't do power with a lick. The Jets, I think, grew wary of him because he couldn't work in both types of run schemes, but he would fit in to what the 49ers are doing. If you are in the deepest of leagues, you can consider getting one of those guys.
Oh, I know who it is.
They actually do pick up whenever that happens. And then one last name, 99% available. I don't know if he's even going to play in week 14, but Sincere McCormick of the Raiders looked great. I think he's the Raiders' best, healthiest running back right now. And
here's
if
the 49ers
isn't ready to go, this is someone who I think could see an uptick in playing time and be a decent fantasy option against the Bucs.
The 49ers are going to just bring back Matt Breida. He was in camp with them this offseason.
Oh, that would make sense too.
I already put in a claim for Frank Gore. Should I cancel that, I guess?
Frank Gore Jr. is on Buffalo's practice squad.
No, I'm glad you mentioned Sincere McCormick. I mean, if you're the Raiders, you got nothing to play for. Why even bother with Alexander Madison? Or
I agree.
Let's go with Sincere McCormick. He just averaged, I think, 5 yards per carry against the Chiefs. I watched the tape. He's pretty slow, I think. I'm not exactly a dynamic player, but he's doing something right because he's been good 2 straight games. Let's see what happens with Sincere McCormick. Not going to catch a lot of passes here. Okay, so now that's just my opinion on him, and he hasn't had a lot of tape, so I don't know, but
Nope, but it's about opportunity at this point.
okay, let's talk about players to drop for Isaac Guerrero. Someone said, would you drop Jonathan Brooks for Guerrero?
Yes.
Yeah. The names that we'll say to drop for Guerrero are going to be different for other players. Like, I want to have Brooks on my fantasy team. I thought he looked pretty good last week, but I'm going to drop almost anybody for Guerrero at this point.
Would you drop Kareem Hunt?
Yes.
Yeah, if he's my worst player, yeah.
Would you drop drop everyone that you're not going to start?
I mean, don't be an idiot. You're not going to drop Pacheco or a great player. Would you drop a Raiders running back for Guerrero? Of course. Would you drop Rashad White for Guerrero?
Ooh,
Yes.
Good one.
I think I would. I really do, because I mean, let me just pump the brakes on this. If we learn that Bucky Irving is out, he's got too many injuries, he's not going to play, then I don't know if I would. But once we know that Bucky's going to be okay, then that's an example of someone that I would let go of to get Guerrero.
Yeah. Okay. So, by the way, I forget who you said. Would you drop this person for? You said,
Brooks?
don't drop Pacheco. I agree. Don't you like? You got to
Obviously not. No.
No, hold on. Yeah.
Use some common sense, everybody.
Yes.
Don't drop a player that's established and good and is going to start for their team.
Yes.
For the flavor.
I was going to ask you a different question. Would you rather have Pacheco or Guerrero rest of season?
Pacheco.
Guerrero.
I'm surprised, Dave. I thought that would be an easy Guerrero. Okay. Anything to say about Denver and Cleveland? Denver 42, Cleveland 31.
I couldn't have been more wrong on that game. My gosh. Sorry
I mean,
for the recommendations there.
Sean Payton admitted after the game that he was wrong on that game.
Everyone was wrong, except, one of us on the show did say, I'm kind of excited for Denver, Cleveland. Am I the only one?
You did. Good call.
But I never would have given fantasy advice like start Jameis Winston. I think I did say to start Jerry Jeudy, but I think as like a number 2-3 receiver.
He was crazy about Jeudy on Sunday morning.
He did like Jeudy quite a bit. So good
He
on him.
finished third on the team in targets. It's so silly.
It's the best revenge game ever.
He should have had an 89-yard touchdown. He was wide open for an 89-yard touchdown.
Yeah, because Levi Wallace can't cover anything.
Well, what do you make of the Browns running backs? They both got 9 carries. Chubb surprisingly had the receiving touchdown. But at halftime, they talked about, I think they interviewed Stefanski going into the locker room, right? And he's like, no, he's not hurt. We're just rolling with Jerome Ford. And Chubb has really struggled. So, Jamie, what do you make of that situation?
He's scoring touchdowns, which is saving him. And he did score 2 against the Steelers. We know they've given up rushing touchdowns a lot lately. So keep that in mind with 6 teams on a bye. I do agree with Dave that Jerome Ford should be added, but I don't agree with the priority. I would rather have Monty Vidal than Jerome Ford at this point. What we've seen from him, his 2 best games since Chubb has come back has been 7 point whatever PPR points, and so I don't like the fact that Jameis just does not throw to his running backs. Yes, Chubb caught the touchdown. This snapped a streak of 6 games in a row where a running back had at least 3 catches against the Broncos. So it was almost a slam dunk. Like, I have to do props for HQ for the Monday and Thursday night games, and you were getting plus money on Jerome Ford to get 3 catches. And it was like, to me, it felt like the easiest layup in the world. And he has 1 catch. So it just doesn't happen from Jameis consistently. So the fact that Chubb caught a touchdown might be one of the biggest miracles to come out of that game, with a lot of fluky things that have happened in that game. So that's where Chubb is. He's touchdown dependent. He can't move past the line of scrimmage very well anymore. Part of that is the offensive line. Part of that, I just think, is, he's going to need a year to get back. And if he ever does get back at his age, he'll be 29 years old. It's tough to expect. So, yeah, I don't want to trust either of these 2 guys if I don't have to.
That's fine. But as far as bye week replacements go, and thinking about the matchup against the Steelers, and you said it, Chubb is touchdown dependent. Ford played 65% of the snaps on Monday. So just far and away, a lot more work. And I almost think he's the better fit for that offense because he can run a route and make a play after the catch and be that check down guy that he wasn't on Monday, but he could still be even against the Steelers.
But he's only done it in one game with Jameis in the 5.
I'm not a huge fan of his. I don't think he's going to be amazing. I don't think he's going to save your season, but I think he still has upside for, not a lot of fantasy points in PPR. Could even be 10, could be the high. So if you want to take Vidal over him and think long-term, I get it. That's fine. I'm just kind of turned off by what the Chargers are doing with their running backs right now.
I do wonder, since you brought up the snap count, the last time they had a short week going in, or a game after a short week, they were very cautious with Nick Chubb's playing time.
That's true. Right. They had a game after a short week. They had a Thursday game
It
upcoming.
was the game going in the
Yeah.
game before they played Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Okay. So who would just real quick here? Let's forget about the fact that Bo Nix is on a bye. Just per game, who do you like better rest of season, Bo Nix or Jameis Winston?
It's more upside with Jameis.
Yeah. Jameis is probably the right answer. As silly as it sounds. And it's not, I don't want to, don't accuse us of being reactionary or not, or living in the moment, whatever. I'm going to play on the volume that Jameis is going to have. This is another team with Cleveland. Let's face it, like they're not going to run the ball. There's not going to be a game coming up where Cleveland's going to split 40 carries between their two running backs. This is going to be Jameis and the roller coaster the rest of the way. And his upside is just way too good to pass up.
It was a weird game for Bo Nix because the Broncos had 2 goal line rushing touchdowns, and they've had almost no running back rushing touchdowns all year. They only have 5 now, 6, I guess, if you include their fullback, and they had 2 last night. And the weird thing about Nix, the other weird thing is that he's now gone 5 of his last 6 games with 5 or fewer rushing yards. So we need a little bit. I was encouraged that he was getting production without the rushing yards. I figured they'd be coming back, but they haven't come back. So we need a little bit more with your legs, Bo Nix. But it wasn't a great game for him last night, especially with the interceptions, but he still threw for 294 yards. I'm going to throw him back in my lineup probably after the bye.
Yeah, he's still a safe starter, but your question was who has more upside.
Yeah. No, I was not disagreeing. I didn't know. My question was not who has more upside. My question was who would you rather have? And
I'm sorry.
Not always the upside.
At that point, at this point in the year, you want to start somebody that's going to have more upside.
No, I don't necessarily agree with.
Well, what's the floor for both of these guys?
First, I'm sure a lot of people would agree with you, but it's not all about upside in fantasy football. I mean, you got to have a little bit of a floor too.
Fine, but I think the floor is kind of similar for both of them.
Yeah, separate discussion.
I guess there's a chance that like Jameis could have a no touchdown, 4 interception game where you get like 6 points or something like that out of him, and that would suck. And Bo Nix's floor is better than that. But I think that Jameis' ceiling is better than Bo's.
How about both of them if you really want to maximize it? Jameis gets the Bengals in week 16. Nix gets the Bengals in week 17.
There you go.
Hey.
All right, real quick drop-o-meter here. Going into a bye, 0 to 10 from Mark Andrews, drop-o-meter.
2.
1.
Xavier Worthy.
2.
He's droppable. Let's call it a 7.
Okay, difference
It's
there.
not an 8. Like we've been waiting all year for the big breakout, and it's not really happening.
Would you drop Tank Bigsby obviously for Garendo? Would you drop Tank Bigsby for any other waiver wire running back?
If I'm looking at handcuffs, I don't want any part of the Jacksonville backfield right now. So, yes, I drop him for Blake Corum. I drop him for Ray Davis. I drop him for Braylon Allen. I drop him for any of these guys. If
What's
I'm not
Jacksonville's
playing
schedule the rest of the way?
At Tennessee, Jets, at Las Vegas, Tennessee.
Does the Titans matchup still scare you?
Yes.
No.
I don't know what happened with last week.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, they do.
They scare me if you're going to run like between the tackles.
They scare me if you're not a good team.
Did and it worked out pretty well. I can't say that I love Bigsby. Would I drop him for my handcuff? Probably.
Kareem Hunt in the same conversation. Would you drop Kareem Hunt for Jaleel McLaughlin?
No, they're the same type of player.
If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it on Saturday. And I don't think I don't love the upside with McLaughlin because I think it's pretty clear that the Broncos are going to use the running back that they think best fits the matchup that they have from week to week and not necessarily give all the work to one guy every week.
Drop-o-meter on Kirk Cousins at Minnesota this week.
$70 billion.
Yeah. He hasn't thrown a touchdown in 3 games, and he might get benched.
Drop-o-meter on Kyle Pitts.
Same thing.
I'm not
going to say $70 billion, but I'll say 7. He's droppable.
Kyle Pitts also has not thrown a touchdown in 3 games. Drop-o-meter on Michael Pitt. Michael Pittman.
2.
I was going to say 4. I don't want to drop him. I understand he's on bye. You might need the roster spot. Try to hang on.
Think if we don't know if Josh Downs will be back, but if Josh Downs is back in 2 weeks when they're at Denver, are you going to start Michael Pittman when no one's on a bye?
I don't know. I'm going to start Pittman even.
But the 2 games afterwards are not bad.
Yeah, Tennessee and the Giants. Drop-o-meter for Amari Cooper, 96% rostered.
10 in a 10-team league and 8 in a 12-team league.
That sounds about right.
Cade Otton.
0.
10.
Oh, 0, 10. Okay. Baker Mayfield.
You're keeping Cade Otton?
Well, I mean, Cade Otton, Will Dissly, Cowboys tight end, like they're same variables in terms of how this could go. He still had 7 targets, and I think Baker just had a bad game. So I'm not going to panic when
It's been 2 games since Mike Evans has been back.
Yeah, one was against the Giants, and they're just great against tight ends for whatever that's worth. Again, happened.
But we're also seeing the run game get going for Tampa. Sterling Shepard's been getting targets for Tampa. Like I wonder.
Same amount of targets.
I kind of feel like it's over for Otton.
It might be, but there's just not a waiver
decision.
wire tight end that I think is that much better.
Yeah, I might start Ferguson over him.
Oh, I would agree.
Yeah, so
if we knew Ferguson was 100%, like I don't want to drop Cade Otton for Schoonmaker.
Yeah, I agree.
And Disley's coming off a no catch game. I mean, like there's no security there.
Yeah, we haven't really talked about the Chargers if McConkey's out, and I guess we're not really expecting that. But they got Tampa Bay, so obviously it's a great. Oh no, sorry, I'm looking at Week 15. They got Kansas City, but who has been struggling against wide receivers since they lost a starting corner. So Quentin Johnson's 88% roster, but maybe Josh Palmer, is he in the discussion of an ad, or does it just make Will Dissly that much better if McConkey were to miss the game?
It would probably be Palmer. Just watching that game, he makes a nice play almost every week, and they just don't go to him enough. So he would be the one. I should probably put him in the column. But I do think that we're going to see McConkey out there.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if we need to run through the waiver wire again, but the 3 quarterbacks that if they're available that we think have big upside.
We should really say 2 because we're going to say Caleb. We should put Russell Wilson in the conversation.
Oh, so 4 then. So I was going to say Richardson, Caleb, and Jameis. And then I didn't know that you felt that way about Russell Wilson.
Well, I mean, I'm just going by the percentages.
No, but I'm talking about guys like could be league winners.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then no, Russell should not be in the conversation.
Okay, so it's Richardson, Jameis, and Caleb. If you can't get them for this week, we look for Will Levis against the team that gives up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. Aiden O'Connell against the team that gives up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks, Tampa Bay. Cooper Rush against the team that gives up the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks, Cincinnati. So you've got guys who have low ownership and great matchups in Will Levis, Aiden O'Connell, and Cooper Rush. But try to get Jameis first. Derek Carr against the Giants. Giants don't give up a ton of points they just get run on all the time, but they stink. And they lost their best pass rusher.
Yeah, I smell an Alvin Kamara 3-touchdown game.
That would be great for me. Bryce Young at Philadelphia. That's tough. But he's been playing better. Maybe you try to get him for the matchups after Philadelphia. Mac Jones in deep leagues. And Michael Penix and Tyrod Taylor could be guys that become starters if you're in a 2-quarterback league. Would you guys, just real quick, do you have Geno Smith or Matthew Stafford in your top 12 this week?
No, I have Geno as a drop, and Stafford's just outside.
Okay.
Geno's definitely not there for me. Stafford is not.
Is Gus
I have Jameis over Stafford. Normally, I love Stafford.
I would start Jameis and Caleb Williams over Stafford.
Sure.
And Stafford's very close to a Levis for me.
Is Gus Edwards more of an add, a drop, or a hold? Gus Edwards.
Hold.
I mean, they have Tampa Bay coming up soon, so that's not bad. This week you don't want to play him. But look, sometimes volume does matter. And if they do decide to give him a 15-carry game, he could fall into the end zone. So don't want to start him. Don't want to rely on him. But if he comes out of this Chiefs game having, let's say, a Sincere McCormick type game, then when they get to Tampa Bay, you'll feel pretty good about that. That's why I think you want to pick up Cavani Vidal.
Who is your favorite? If you had to roster one Raiders running back, it would be?
Madison.
McCormick, who I would potentially then drop for somebody else.
Jonathan Brooks, 71% rostered. You could pick him up. He looked good, but didn't get a ton of work, but that could change, especially with the fumbling for Chuba Hubbard. And we talked about Garendo, Vidal, McLaughlin, Jerome Ford, Tajay Spears. I'm hoping for more from Tajay Spears. I don't know, only one touch against Washington. So played 25% of the snaps. That was the fewest of any game, and he did not leave with an injury. And the Jaguars give up a lot of receiving yards to running back. So honestly, I'm probably going to have to start Tajay Spears in a league because of buys this week, which stinks. Then all the handcuffs. Wide receivers, we got Keenan Allen, Cedric Tillman. I mean, Cedric Tillman, double-digit PPR fantasy points, yes or no this week at Pittsburgh?
Yes. I think 11.
If he plays double digits, yes. 15 plus, no.
They said he was making progress in the concussion protocol. I thought he'd get back there, but he didn't. So another week, obviously a short week, but hopefully back out there for Tillman. Roma Dunze, yeah, yes or no? Adam or leave him out there?
Depends what you're looking at. Again, 26 targets in the last 3 games with, Thomas Brown calling plays. At some point, those will turn into something, whether it's just a fluky game. The first game when Thomas Brown took over, he had 12.5 PPR points. So that's, on the cusp of a number 3 receiver. And so anytime you see somebody getting these many opportunities who's as talented as he is and as talented as his quarterback is he a must-start guy? No. But if you have the ability to stash somebody, like as much as Parker Washington was great last week, I'd rather have Roma Dunze on my team than Parker Washington.
Okay, we got the priorities that are available in a lot of leagues: Elijah Moore, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Adam Thielen. We're just a little bummed about Thielen's schedule with Philadelphia coming up. And Dallas is honestly
he's a short area target more than anything else for Bryce Young. And so if they're going to be trailing against Philadelphia, I think that's where Thielen can come in and get, let's call it like 12 PPR points, maybe 6 non-PPR points.
What if Flowers?
He'll be okay, but we're talking about a number 3 receiver.
Flowers had a bad. No, Flowers had 3 for 74 on 7 targets. Parker Washington, role change last week. Did not play in the slot nearly as much. More downfield. Had a great game. 12 targets for Parker Washington. MVS, just like a worse version of Nick Westbrook-Akine.
He's got 4 touchdowns in 3 games with the last 3 games with the Saints. He's got 3 touchdowns in his 33 games with the Chiefs.
And Jamie put Brandon Cooks, Dontavian Wicks, Trey Tucker, Ray McLeod, and Sterling Shepard in there. Josh Palmer's another guy you can think about. Tight ends, the shallow league guys are Henry, Kraft, and Kincaid. But Ferguson or Schoonmaker, great matchups this week. Will Dissly, a good matchup this week against Kansas City. Pat Freiermuth's been good 2 weeks in a row, and he gets Cleveland. Grant Calcaterra, like I said, 8 or more fantasy points in 3 of 4 games earlier this season. I don't know if Goddard missed all of them or he left one of them with an injury, but he faced the Panthers. The Panthers give up the most fantasy points to tight ends. Noah Gray, it's been pretty solid. It's the Chargers. And if Dawson Knox is the guy instead of Kincaid, he's on this list. Juwan Johnson had 7 targets. Someone's going to have to catch passes in this offense. Now Taysom Hill's out. He had 7 targets last week.
Just more for MVS.
Yeah, maybe. You put Tyler Conklin on here. Miami has been horrible against tight ends lately. Wow.
And he had a little bit of a spike game for him recently last week. So
yeah, 5 targets. And Tommy Tremble. But I would say Jatavian Sanders is someone to consider. He's been playing pretty well and should be back this week. They seemed optimistic about him being back.
The tight end position for them has played well. Tremble had a good game without Sanders there.
He did. DSTs, the Saints, the Dolphins, the Cardinals. Cardinals maybe more long-term too. They have the best schedule throughout the playoffs of the teams we're going to mention. The Seahawks and the Titans. And John Parker Romo, Evan McPherson, Tyler Bass, Matthew Wright, Jason Myers are your kicker streamers. And that is it for a long episode of the Waiver Wire here on Fantasy Football Today.
What, am I hosting this?
Yeah, this is crazy. And we do not have CBS Sports Network this week. Sorry about that, but we will be back tomorrow with I'm going to call it Worryometer Wednesday tomorrow.
Oh, what was why did I keep you up at night?
Oh, Jamie, so late in the show.
It's an interesting question to end the show with.
Last week, I was staying at my parents' house and I was in town, and there's no TV in the room I was sleeping in. And I had to watch something on my phone. I like to watch TV before I get to bed. So I was watching a Monk episode on Netflix, and somebody was really bothering me at 2 a.m. because he kept making his freaking he kept making his ad drops at 2 a.m. on Thursday morning. And Jamie Eisenberg out of this guy, Jamie Eisenberg out of this guy, go to bed already. I'm trying to watch Monk. Thank you, Jamie.
There's a thing you could turn off. It's called notifications.
Yeah. What if it's an emergency? What if Jamie Eisenberg needs help? Then I gotta be up for him. All right.
That's how you know I'm in trouble. I make an ad drop somewhere. If I'm
no, if you don't make an ad
people
drop,
call 911. Jamie makes an ad drop.
If it's Jamie's not making ad drops, then please someone check on Jamie.
Well, we held hostage the only thing I'm allowed to use is the CBS Sports app.
Yes. We'll be. Yeah, he adds someone with an H, someone with an E, someone with an L, someone with a P. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk to you then on Fantasy Football Today.